Hello and welcome to a very special Crawley Town episode of the Gull-Mouth Action podcast. I'm Matt Pohl and I'm joined by Mark Dunford and Sam Morton. And on this episode, we'll bring you all the latest from a tumultuous week at the Broadfield Stadium. After an historic 20 months in charge, Scott Lindsey has departed Crawley Town to join division below Milton Keynes Dons. The 52-year-old worked miracles during his time at the Broadfield Stadium, with some even calling him the club's greatest ever manager. After joining Crawley Town in January 2023, Lindsey transformed the Reds from relegation candidates into a side that took League Two by storm to claim the most unlikely of promotions last season. Having easily dispatched MK Dons in the playoff semi-finals, Crawley then rose to the occasion on the biggest stage, sealing a 2-0 victory over Crewe at Wembley to earn promotion back to League One for the first time since the 2014-15 campaign. We'll look back on Lindsey's tenure at the Reds and the legacy he will leave, discuss who could be in line to take up the Crawley Town hot seat, and bring you all the reaction from the Reds trip to Wrexham, which proved to be Lindsey's last game in charge of the club. But starting with you, Mark, it's been very much a whirlwind 24 hours. How big of a shock was it to hear that Lindsey was departing to join MK Dons?
I think we were always expecting him to leave at some point this year, just simply because of the interest in him would be so high whenever there was a job came up. And we talked about it loads on this podcast about whether it's lower half championship, League One, League Two, whenever a job came up, Lindsey's name was always going to be in the conversation. I mean, the fact that he's gone to MK Dons is a bit of a surprise, but it's very similar to his move from Swindon to Crawley. Swindon were in the playoffs at the time. Crawley were really struggling. I mean, that was in the same division. This one does seem like a big drop down. But, I mean, anyone who's been to MK Stadium MK Dons, yeah, they're hated. People don't like them, but they want to be a big club, and they are ambitious. And I think that's where the attraction was for Lindsey. So was I shocked? I don't know if I was shocked really that he'd left, but to go to MK Dons, I was surprised because of where they are in the league and that. But he obviously really loves a challenge. Scott Lindsey, he loves going down and getting a team, putting his stamp on it, and then taking them up. I mean, worth a bet putting them to get promoted this year, I think, because of the players they've got. I mean, obviously, they've got Liam Kelly and Lawrence Maguire there. He knows there's Joe Tomlinson as well, who he knows he worked with at Swindon. So he's got a good squad there. And, they're underachieving at the moment, but I think he's going to take them. But, it always seemed like it was going to happen. We saw at Preston, his name was attached to it. Whether there was actual interest from Preston and Scott Lindsey, who knows? Same with Blackpool, etc. I'm absolutely gutted because I had a really good relationship with Scott, and it's going to be interesting how it all pans out now for Crawley after this news.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, are you kind of the same as Mark? I suppose the only certainty in football is that the manager will go eventually. Was the only surprise for you the fact that it was a drop down to MK Dons when he's been linked to championship jobs?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mark. It was probably not a surprise that he's left. I think because it seemed like every time there was a vacancy in League One, League Two, Scott Lindsey was one of the first names to be linked with the job, and it was obviously I know Mark has had to ask him about it a lot of times in press conferences in terms of the jobs that he's been linked with, and Scott has never turned it down outright. He's always said he will stay at Crawley until he's told otherwise, kind of thing. And he's always left that possibility open, and I feel like with his comments, he's always made it clear that I always felt that if the right offer came up, he would take it. And this is obviously the one that's turned his head enough for him to move on. And it is a shame that it's obviously back down to League Two. And there's a case of maybe thinking he could have done better. He could have stayed in League One or even gone to a high-end League One club and could potentially get promoted to the Championship. But instead, he's obviously gone back to League Two. And as Mark said, he clearly loves the challenge. And I feel like he does really the opportunity to get a club of the stature of MK Dons back to where they should be, really. I think the stadium they've got, the financial backing they've got, I think he's going to do really well there. And as Mark's mentioning, with Liam Kelly and Lawrence Maguire, he knows people there, and it just maybe everything just lined up perfectly for him, and he feels like he can go and take that next step into what is a big club and to get them back to where they probably feel they should be. But from Crawley's point of view, it is gutting, and I'm gutted. He's given Crawley fans the best moments in their history, and he will go down. I think he's the best manager in Crawley's history, really. So it is a big shame. I think it was quite nice to see Scott Malone's post saying he's one of the best men, one of the best managers he's ever played for. So that just sums it up, really. I think the players will be just as gutted as the fans, I imagine.
Yes, you mentioned the fans there, Sam. How did they react to the news, Mark? I think it's safe to say that most of them thought he could walk on water by the end of his tenure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, because it was the worst kept secret, the fact that he was going yesterday. I mean, all day, everyone seemed to know that it was happening. It was just a case of when the time was. But I did a fan reaction piece quite early on in the day, just people just praising him and just saying they don't begrudge him a move anywhere because of what he has delivered for Crawley Town. And yeah, I mean, there's a few people getting a little antsy from what he said after when he's joined. He said about Liam Kelly was texting him all week, and people getting annoyed by that, saying, "Oh, I thought he was supposed to be fully focused on Crawley, and he's reading text from Liam Kelly." I get text during a day. I'm fully focused on my job. It's quite simple. You've got So there's the odd people who are annoyed that he's gone to MK Dons. They can't believe he's gone there. But I think the general consensus is what he did for us. He can do whatever he wants. He deserves. They don't begrudge him at all, and he deserves to do what he wants. I think the general consensus is he is a legend and always will be, because he gave memories that they will never forget.
I've seen some obviously dramatic one. I've seen some dramatic fans saying that's it, they're done with the club now. I think after all the players and now the manager's gone, they've had enough. But I feel like that's a bit knee-jerk reactions, and I feel like, as Mark said, the majority will get over it quickly. I think football's obviously very fast-paced, and if a new manager comes in and starts doing well, I think fans will quickly be happy.
Absolutely. This is kind of related, and we don't mean to sound like we're doom-mongering, but Sam, how potentially derailing is Lindsey's departure to Crawley Town season? They certainly made a bright start to the League One campaign, but I think you said, Mark, was it winless in 4 at the moment? I might have got my facts wrong there.
In the league, yeah, they won the first 2 games, and they've drawn 1 and lost 3 since, sort of thing. So yeah.
How do you think this will affect their season then, Sam?
Yeah, it's a tough one to call, isn't it? Because I think in terms of the performances, they've only really had one bad one, and that was against Barnsley. I think they've been really unlucky, especially in those last 2 games against Stockport and Wrexham. Stockport, I thought they should have won, and from what I've read about Wrexham, they could easily have won that. They're very unlucky to have lost it. So yeah, it's difficult. It's one of those where I feel like if Scott Lindsey had stayed, I would have not been worried at all about them staying in League One for another season. I feel like the performances were so good, and they were really putting their stamp on things so early on in the season. You felt like results would then follow. Now with Scott Lindsey gone, you just wonder what's going to happen. It all depends on kind of who comes in, how well the players adjust to potential new style. But I feel like whoever comes in needs to just let the players continue kind of where they left off, and maybe wait a little bit before putting his own mark on it, because that could where it could potentially fall apart a little bit. So I think Scott Lindsey's obviously done such great work in building the foundations there, and I think one thing I should have mentioned before, actually, I think Scott is probably seeing MK Dons as a chance to go for a bit more stability. I think so. Obviously, when you think last season he worked absolute miracles with a completely new squad. They've now all left, and now he's got to do it all again with a new group. It feels like maybe at MK Dons he might have that more stability financially and be able to keep players and not sell them each season, which obviously is a different model completely to Crawley. So it'll be interesting now with the new manager how they'll adapt to that Crawley style of transfers, really, kind of the way they work in the business side of things. And so it's a difficult one to call. I really hope the new manager comes in and just kind of takes it slow and lets the players kind of continue where they left off, really, because the performances have been so good. And I feel like if they just keep performing like that, the points will come. There won't be any reason to panic as such. But obviously, 4 teams go down from League One, so there is obviously that big not a lot of room for error, basically. So there's definitely
and you've got to think about the January transfer window as well, because you'd imagine Lindsey will come knocking for a couple of players. I mean, we know how much he loves Jay Williams, Ronan Darcy, people like that. I mean, he likes all the players, but he seems to have a real connection with those 2 in particular. And I've seen fans already saying this, leave him alone kind of thing. But if he adds those to that current MK Don squad, they'll be flying. But it's going to be it is going to be tough. But you just don't, because I mean, I've listened to a couple of football podcasts talking about Arne Slot at Liverpool. he hasn't made any big changes yet. He sort of carried on what Klopp left. And yes, he will implement his changes eventually, but he's not made any wholesale changes because it could go wrong. So that, like Sam said, you just hope the new manager, whoever it may be, does a similar thing, just keeps it going, same playing style if he can, etc., and then start to implement their own things. Because if they do that, like Sam said, the performances have been really good. So hopefully they'll continue.
Joe Hart was talking about it on TV the other day as well. Actually, he was saying that when Ange Postecoglou replaced Brendan Rodgers when Brendan Rodgers replaced Ange Postecoglou at Celtic, he did a very similar thing where they had such a good style of play and an ethos at the club that Brendan didn't want to change that too much. And Joe Hart said he really appreciated that, and all the players did. So I know it's a different situation, obviously, at Celtic, but that kind of thing I think does help when a manager that's so loved and so respected and has made such a stamp on the club. It's important you don't wipe that away straight away and you kind of keep a little bit of what he was doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We obviously don't mean to speculate, but we've brought up, I think, the fact that MK Dons boasts two former Crawley players. Do you think that made his decision a little bit easier, Sam, in the fact that he's already got 2 players there, or 3 players there actually, that know what's wanted from them?
Yeah, I think that probably has impacted things. He obviously knows the players, and I think that's something we have seen when he was at Crawley. He liked to bring in players that he was familiar with, and obviously knew in the past, and I feel like that definitely did help him. So I feel like that's probably impacted his decision, because obviously Lawrence Maguire and Liam Kelly especially were so crucial to that promotion campaign. So yeah, I'm sure that went into his thinking, but there's probably lots of other factors, and as I say, obviously that it obviously just works for him on a personal basis as well as a professional one.
Absolutely, and we've touched upon Lindsey's achievements at Crawley Town and his 20 months in charge, Mark. But what will his legacy be, and how hard will it be to replace him?
Well, I did ask him what he thinks his legacy will be, and he used the words "achieving the unachievable" was how he saw his time at Crawley, which is absolutely spot on, because nobody expected them to do what they did last season. But I think, and it was something Tom Allman said at the awards dinner last year, he made everyone believe again. Crawley fans were at probably the lowest ebb they've ever been at when Lindsey joined. They were, I think it was 3rd from bottom when he joined. They looked doomed, and they went on a little run from then, actually, where they went, I think, 2nd from bottom, possibly even bottom. And they looked absolutely doomed, and he sort of turned it around. And then so I think just the fact that he made the fans believe again is something that he should be very proud of, because, well, all football fans for any team can be difficult at times. If they're not winning, they're all doom and gloom. If they're winning, blah blah blah. But I think he just made everyone believe again, and he gave them the best possible memories. But hard to replace him. It won't be hard to replace him, because there's plenty of managers out there. But replacing what he's achieved and what he's done is a completely different thing. How long did it take Wagme to find the right person the first time? A long time. 4 or 5 managers in the end. Betsy Everington, Lewis Young. I know Lewis Young was interim and that, but people argued he should have got the job. So let's just hope it doesn't take them as long again to find it. I've written a little opinion piece today, actually, just saying Scott Lindsey performed miracles. Now it's Wagme's turn to perform one by finding the perfect replacement. So because it won't be easy. We've seen it with Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger. How long does it take to find that person to replace an absolute legend at the club? So
absolutely. And we're talking about replacements. Who are the early favourites to replace Lindsey, Sam? And of the early favourites, who would you like to see take up the reins?
Yeah, there's a few names doing the rounds. Obviously, I think Mark did a good piece yesterday looking at all the betting odds for some early names that are coming out. But I think the interim manager, I think initially will be Ben Gladwin, who's obviously the former captain and current coach. He's among the names that could potentially take the job on a full-time basis. Gladwin himself is at 3-1, so he's actually one of the favourites at the moment. Former assistant coach Nathan Rooney comes close behind at 4-1, so that's potentially one they might look at. Barry Murphy, the former head coach of Man City, is currently 6-1. And Andrew Crofts has been named as well. He's obviously the assistant at Brighton. The Welsh coach.
That's an interesting one, that.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Yeah. Obviously, we spoke to him for the first time in a long time actually after the game against Nottingham Forest at Brighton because obviously Azella got himself sent off and he came across well, spoke well. So he could be one of interest to him if he does want to obviously be a first team manager. It's obviously not that far to go from Brighton, so it could be one that to keep an eye on. Pete Wilde, the former Barrow boss, is 4-1. So there's definitely quite a lot of options that Crawley have. I think there's definitely going to be other names coming in as the next few days come along. But I think Gareth Southgate's got to come in. I think that would be the dream move. That's the one I'd love to see.
Yeah, absolutely. A name that's emerged this morning as well is Rob Elliott, the former Newcastle goalkeeper. He's the current manager of Gateshead. And he's suddenly become the 2-5 favourite, which is very interesting. So he's had a really good start to the season with Gateshead. They're currently 5th in the National League. And Adam Hinshelwood's name's come in, obviously down at Worthing, very well respected in sort of non-league circles. Did an incredible job with Worthing. 2nd in the National League now with York City. So whether it's too soon for him, I don't know. It'd be quite a big risk, but yeah, who knows? There's a lot of names out there, but speaking to someone yesterday, I've heard that they do want to make a quick appointment. So hopefully it will be quick. I do think Ben Gladwin will be the interim manager. But again, no disrespect to Ben Gladwin whatsoever. But obviously he's only literally become a coach this year. So and he helped out a bit last year. So that would be a huge risk. But I'm sure Ben would do a great job, and he will do a great job in the interim basis. But yeah, I'm not even sure he would want to take a full-time job this early on in a coaching career.
Can Crawley afford to take risks in League One, Mark, in terms of their managerial appointment? What do you reckon?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I think they will take risks. I think that's what WAGMI do. That's their model. They'll take a punt on someone. Like if you look at the likes of Kevin Betsy, Matthew Everington, people your face then. They took risks, and sometimes they don't work. I mean, I don't think Scott Lindsey was particularly a huge risk when they appointed him. I think they needed someone safe. Whether, like it's going back to how long it will take them to find the perfect replacement, you hope they don't take too big a risk. You want someone who has got that League One experience, considering they are, 17th, I think they are at the moment.
Yeah.
All it takes is 2 or 3 more defeats on the trot, and then suddenly you're in that bottom 4 and you need to get out. And you need that experienced head to sort of guide the team through. So I think they do need someone with that bit of, even top-end League Two experience, like Pete Wilde, for example, did an amazing job with Barrow last year. It's going to be very, very interesting. But I wouldn't want to see them take too big a risk. I mean, I like the idea of someone who's doing well in the National League, because the standard in the National League now is quite high, as we've seen with teams that have come up. I know there's a lot of money involved, but Wrexham, Stockport, look what they've done, Notts County, since they've come back up. So, I think Crawley fans will want a little bit of security, and they'll want to know that they've got someone who knows what they're doing, rather than someone like, who's he? Done Gateshead? Who's Gateshead? Sort of thing. So, it'll be very, very interesting to see. But I wouldn't want to see them go too risky.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Sam? Would you like to see Crawley bring in someone who's at least got Football League experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that has to be the next step for Crawley. I think in the position they're in, obviously in League One, obviously they've, as I say, had some really good performances, but I feel like this isn't the time to take any risks, and you kind of want someone to come in, steady the ship after I'm sure it'll be an uncertain time for the players. And because a lot of these new players have probably come in because of Scott Lindsey. I think with what he did last season, that kind of model that he's brought in and the style of play, it was such an attractive style of play as well. I think that a lot of the players probably came in knowing that, and then now that he's gone, I feel like there might be a bit of disappointment amongst some of these new players. So I feel like someone that can maybe just follow in his footsteps, someone with a lot of experience, and is not going to shake the boat too much and change things too much. I think it's definitely one that they need to get right to make sure they don't fall into that danger zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we've mentioned all of his great achievements, but chaps, which one stands out to you, Mark? Which memory will you most remember? And I can probably guess which memory this is.
Well, I think Wembley is a gimme, to be honest. So I'm not going to talk about too much about Wembley. It was just an incredible day. But actually my favourite particular bit from that day was when myself and Gary Smith went up to the bit where the players come down from collecting the trophy. They come down the thing. Scott Lindsey came down, had the trophy, and he just looked over at me and Gary and went, "Way!" like that, and came over and gave us a big hug. But it was actually the away match at MK Dons in the second leg, because they went with a 3-0 lead from the first leg. And I always remember I was sitting in the press box. I had Sam Gadsden behind me, the media guy from Crawley Town, who was so nervous and he couldn't relax even when they were like 4-1 up that day or whatever. He just still was convinced something was going to go wrong. But the performance that night and the atmosphere from the Crawley fans, I mean, I've seen comments about MK Dons being a library, Stadium MK and that being, but it was just incredible. And another moment in that game, and it was another sort of intimate, that sounds like the wrong word, between me and Scott. I went on, I somehow got on the pitch afterwards when all the players were celebrating and that. And Scott saw me, ran over to me, hugged me, and just said, "How effing good were we tonight?" sort of thing. And then that was a real moment that stuck with me, because they were just incredible that night. And I think it's the most complete performance I've ever seen from a Crawley side. Even when they beat Leeds 3-0, there was still moments in that game where they probably weren't perfect, but the MK Dons second leg was just an absolute perfect performance.
What about yourself, Sam? Which Crawley Town memory sticks out for you with under Lindsey?
Yeah, I think, as Mark said, the Wembley day is obviously the obvious choice, and it was absolutely amazing. I think both of us were a bit emotional at the end of that one. It was, it was incredible. I think just to see.
I didn't cry. You cried. It was very dusty in there. There was a lot of dust in the room.
Yeah, yeah, it was just incredible that day, and obviously it was nice to kind of share that moment with the players in the mix zone as well after the game. But I think, as Mark said, the game away at Milton Keynes, I unfortunately wasn't there for, and I'm gutted I missed that one. But the home leg against them was incredible as well. The 3-0 win that really set them on the way to that promotion. I feel like that really kind of was the catalyst for it. So I think not a lot of people were expecting Crawley to have won so convincingly at home, let alone away. So it was an incredible day. It was obviously a packed out stadium, and so the most amount of fans I've seen in the stadium for a long time, and it was a real special day, that one. So it was too many to choose from, really, in our season, and the memories that Scott Lindsey brought to the club and the fans will live forever, really. So it was an incredible season. Yes,
very well put, Sam. Lindsey's last game in charge of Crawley on Saturday just gone saw the Reds go down 2-1 at high-flying Wrexham in League One. Sum that performance up for us, please, Mark. Sam kind of touched upon it, but it sounds like they could have got something out of that one.
Yeah, they should have done, absolutely. They absolutely dominated the game. And it was similar last season. I think they had 68% possession in both games. It was more like 60% this time. But they dominated in terms of shots on target. They had 7 compared to Wrexham's 3. And just absolutely battered them, basically. But again, and I think I saw Sam Jordan, one of the Crawley Town fans, he was saying he was chatting to a load of Wrexham fans afterwards, and Wrexham fans were saying you're the best team we've played so far this year. You should have beaten us, kind of thing. But it was the goal scorer, Junior Quiterna, who said afterwards they just have to be more ruthless now, because they can't just keep dominating. There's no point dominating games, having loads of chances if you're not going to score. And he took responsibility for a couple of chances that he missed before he actually scored. So, it's a game they should have won. And if they'd won it, they'd been higher up the table. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered with Scott Lindsey leaving. I think he would have left if they'd won that one or not. But it's a shame they didn't pick up the 3 points, because, like you say, you don't want to get into a rut now, because it's for 4 games without a defeat in the league, without a win, in the league is quite a tough one to take. So, but they're back in action this weekend. A couple of home games in a week, so hopefully they'll be able to get something from those.
Yeah, we'll come on to them in a bit. But you mentioned Quiterna there, Mark. He was on the score sheet for the Reds again, taking his tally up to 3 and 5 league appearances. How impressed have you been with Quiterna, Sam? He looks like he's on a bit of a hot streak at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's been the star man from the season so far. I think right from the first game pre-season that I saw, he was the star of the show. Really, really impressive. He's kind of takes the game to defenders, and he's a real nightmare. I think every game that I've seen him play has been a nightmare for defenders to deal with. None more so than when he came on against Stockport and obviously completely changed the game within about 30 seconds of being on the pitch. So I feel like that's that's a really great sign. It's obviously still really early on in his Crawley career, so you feel like he could get even better. And it was a cracking goal that he scored at Wrexham as well. Brilliant pass by Ronan Darcy. And a really, really good finish. And as Mark said, he obviously has some other chances, but just to be getting in those positions, and he's clearly a real goal threat. So I think he's been really impressive, and hopefully it continues. I think they're going to need him, absolutely. I think obviously these games coming out, you want to start getting some more points on the board, and I feel like he will be the man that needs to lead them to some wins.
Absolutely, and the first of these home games sees Crawley entertain Bolton with the game kicking off at the slightly earlier time at 12:30. How do you see this one going, Mark? I'm quite surprised to see both teams are kind of around the same position in the table at this stage, aren't they, I think?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, Bolton, obviously they lost in the playoff final to Oxford, the mighty Oxford United on last season, day before Crawley won at Wembley, actually. But yeah, so it's a surprise to see them down there because obviously Bolton, huge club, were in the Premier League for a long time. To see them down there with Crawley at the moment, again, it's early days. We still has got to take shape of the league, really, I think. But I think it's a great chance because it's a 12:30 kickoff in front of the Sky cameras. I think it's a great chance for whoever's in charge, assuming we think it's Ben Gladwin, a chance just to really go out there and get a win, get the fans on side very quickly following the news this week, and go for it. They've got the players to do it, Crawley, and if they continue, like we've said earlier, playing the style that they've been playing, the wins are going to come. There's a team going to take an absolute battering from Crawley at some point, whether it's Bolton on Saturday or Mansfield on Tuesday, who knows? But to have two home games now after what's happened this week with Scott Lindsey, I think is really important. The fans need to get together, just get behind the side, and I know they will. There's a few saying that they won't go now because Lindsay's left, but that's ridiculous. The real fans will be there, and they'll support, get behind them, and I think they can definitely get something from the game at Bolton. They're obviously not in the greatest of form. Crawley have just got to go out there and do what they do.
Hope that Clyde Lollos doesn't score against them, I think. Is he down? He's down at Bolton, isn't he? Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yes, he is. Yes. I'm not sure he's played that much actually this year. I don't know if he got an injury, I think, early on. Sorry, I should have done more research into that. But yeah, it'll be good to see him back. Corey Adai got a really good reception when he came back with Stockport. So I think Scott Lindsey said, didn't he, that any player that played last year will always get a good reception at the Broadfield Stadium. So. Yeah,
quite right too. The Reds then entertain Mansfield 3 days later at the Broadfield Stadium. At the time of recording, the Stags sit 10th in League One, having won 3, drawn twice and lost once in 6 league games. Again, Sam Morton, how do you see this one going?
A tough game. They're clearly a difficult team to beat, judging from their form so far. They're only short of the playoff places on goal difference. They've scored 11 and conceded 11. And they've most recently, at the time of recording, had a last gasp win against Shrewsbury after they fell behind early doors. So they've obviously shown they've got that ability to come back from defeat. Lee Gregory is one to watch out for. He's got 3 goals in the last 2 games. And it was his 5th of the season against Shrewsbury. So a tough game. It's a tough game. I think a lot will depend on how things go against Bolton. Because if they lose against Bolton, then the Mansfield game quickly becomes almost a mini must-win game just to stop that rut. So you hope they get a positive result against Bolton, get the confidence going after Scott's departure. And hopefully they can get a positive result. But I think, 4 points from the next 2 games would be positive. But obviously, you're going to be aiming for 6 out of 6. But I think Mansfield's going to be a really tough game.
Purely speculative, Mark. But if Crawley win the next 2 under Ben Gladwin, does that put him in pole position for the Reds job?
I don't know. Like I said, I think it's too early for him in his coaching career. I mean, he's got to get a job at some point. So if they're 2 brilliant performances, I mean, I think we found when Lewis Young was made interim manager, Crawley had a real good manager bounce then, didn't they? Yeah. And I think at that time he had to change the style of play, and they went back to basics and that. But he hadn't had a manager's job then. But all the players wanted him. But I think it was too big a risk because he hadn't had that job before. And but I think that might be the same with Ben Gladwin. I suspect whatever happens in the next 2 games, Crawley will have a new manager at some point that hasn't worked at the club before.
And last one for me, I'm assuming that new manager probably won't be in place by Tuesday. I'm assuming it will be a long drawn out process, but again, purely speculative, Mark.
Yeah, I would have thought so. They've taken their time before. We saw, I think it was when Everton was appointed, there was quite a long time between, because they said they wanted to get the decision right. So yeah, we know how that worked out. Yeah, I don't know. I think they do need to get someone in quickly because, yeah, part of me thinks that Ben Gladwin will join up at MK Dons with Scott Lindsey at some point, because I know how much Scott regards Gladwin and I know how much Gladwin regards Scott as well. So part of me thinks this might be just part of a transition period, but just to have some stability for the next couple of games, and then we'll see. But you never know. He could be. Wag me, shock me all the time. So who knows?
Yes, we shall wait and see. And we'll close out the special episode with score predictions. I think both of these are going to be quite difficult to call. I don't know how I would predict these, but starting with you, Mark, Crawley at home to Bolton on Saturday. How do you see this one going?
I think they're going to win on Saturday, and I think they're going to draw on Tuesday. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. It'll be tight, it'll be tense, but I think they'll get over the line and keep those fans on board.
Absolutely. And as you predict the draw, Mark, how do you see that going on Tuesday then? What's your score prediction?
It'll be a tough one. I think Crawley will take the lead, Mansfield will score second, and then it will be quite a back-to-the-walls effort to maintain a point. I'm going to go 1-1.
Excellent stuff. And finally, Mr. Morton, how do you see these two home games going for Crawley Town?
You won't believe me, but I've written down the exact two scores that Mark has just given for both games. I said 2-1 Crawley against Bolton and 1-0 against Mansfield. So I'll stick with that. I won't change it. I agree completely. I think they'll get the win against Bolton.
4 points would be brilliant from these two games.
Yeah, they would absolutely.
Given everything that's happened.
I think they'll get those 4 points they're looking for. I think, a win against Bolton and draw against Mansfield, I think, it's about right, I think.
Well, we shall see. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this special podcast, chaps. You can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can obviously watch more excellent videos on shotstv.com at Freeview channel 262. Thank you very much for listening or watching, and we will speak to you next week.
Thanks, guys.